Hello you guys, I'm back in a pink top for you today, and we're going to take a look at Etude number 3 on the viola from Edward Elgar's very easy, melodious etudes for the violin, but transcribed for the viola. So this is available for you on imslp.org, the blessed imslp.org, which you should definitely subscribe to for $2.99 a month, or what is that, $36 for the year. It's a wonderful thing to support IMSLP. I will link this below. Just make sure that you click on the transcriptions tab and you click on the viola part. So these little etudes are really special because they're for violin or viola and piano. So you can, here's your permission slip to go make a pianist friend. They're really lovely and wonderful people. It's really awesome to befriend a pianist. So what we're going to do today is we're going to take a look at number 3, etude number 3. And this one's a little trickier. Last one was pretty easy in comparison. This one has a lot of directions. So I'm going to encourage you to grab a pencil and we're going to go just line by line real quick. So first thing, let's look at the directions at the beginning, the key signature and the time signature. So the very first thing, we got to memorize this one. I don't have a little trick for you, although if you do need some music theory help with all of the key signatures and things, I have an entire playlist of all of the keys, how to learn all the keys, all the scales, all the, major, minor, everything as well. So go look in my playlist and you'll find something talking about the key signatures, getting to know the key signatures. Anyway, let's memorize that we have F major or D minor for this one, and our altered note, our one little accidental, is B flat, B as in butterfly. So let's mark that B flat at the beginning, and in a minute we'll go and get our hand patterns and make sure that we know where our fingers go based off of that one little B flat that we have. The next thing to look at is 3/4. So what does that mean? The upper number 3 tells you how many beats there are in a measure. So we got 3 beats in a measure. So we got to start to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. And then the bottom number, the 4, tells you what the beat is. So if it's a 4, it's a quarter note, which is really important for us to know that this is a quarter note, right? So that allows us to calculate very accurately the other rhythms. If this is a quarter note, eighth notes are twice as fast. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. All right, so we'll get to that maybe a little bit more in detail in a minute. One other interesting side note, music theory nerd moment. When you're in 3/4 or in 2/4 or any key signature really, beat 1 is the most important one. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, and 3 propels you back to 1. So it's like you're just kind of bouncing over the bar line to beat 1, but beat 1 is where you really land heavy. And you can see the rhythms here. Our longest rhythm is always on beat 1, but the bowings that we're about to delve into might actually make it so that your beat 3 is the strongest feeling one. Which is just something that we're going to need to figure out how to minimize, because listen to this. I've got to hold the bow for basically 2 counts, 1 and 2 and then I have beat 3 to get back to where I started. So if I use too much bow, I have to use all this bow in a very short amount of time, which is going to make it sound really loud. So if I am not really careful with how I use the bow, listen to what happens. Is beat 1 the strongest one, or is beat 3 the strongest one? Can you tell? But it should be. Did you see I used way less bow? I was really trying to control how much bow I use on beat 1 so that I don't have a lot of bow to return to on beat 3. I also did not really care about the dynamic very much. I was just trying to show you as clearly and as loudly the bowing, basically the effect of the bowing. So, okay, let's take a look at these dynamics now. So we've got piano to start with. That's that little P at the beginning. So P for piano, that's like a whisper. So you're gonna be very quiet at the very beginning, very, very quiet. And then at the end of that line, we have a crescendo. A crescendo is where you're gonna start to get louder. And they actually in measure 7 tell you exactly how loud they want you to get. They want you to get to forte, which is the loudest dynamic that we have in this little etude here. So we're going to use lots of bow on that one. We're basically going to be using, there's lots of different ways that we can achieve dynamics, but I think the easiest way is to work on the amount of bow that you're using. You can also mess around with the contact point. Do you want to play closer to the bridge, further from the bridge? You can mess around with how much weight or not weight you're using. You could also experiment with how much hair you want to use. Do you want to use flat hair? That would give you more hair, so maybe more sound. You could turn the bow a little bit and use less hair, and then you'd have a more delicate sound. You could also decide like where you want to be in. There's like all these different things that we can consider where you want to be in the bow to achieve these things. We're literally going to just focus on one thing, which is just the amount of bow that we're using. So if we have a really loud dynamic, we're going to use a lot of bow. If you have a very quiet dynamic like piano, you're going to use very little bow. Okay, so anyway, we got some more pianos right after the forte, and it's subito piano. It's like suddenly subito. You're like really loud, and then suddenly it's very quiet. Okay, so let's mark that in measure 7, 8, 9. In measure 9, it's like suddenly you're just very quiet. And then a couple measures later, we got a crescendo. We're gonna get a little bit louder, but it doesn't say how loud to actually get. So let's just say like mezzo forte, which is like a speaking voice. In my opinion, it's like your normal everyday voice. So we work whispering, and then we're gonna just get up to a speaking voice, and then we're gonna come right back down to whispering. All right, okay, another little music theory moment. Measure 14, 15, 16, there's a little double bar there, and that just denotes sections. So your ear might kind of tell you, oh, there's something slightly new going on there. We'll encounter that, I guess, when we get there. And then we've got another crescendo, but it doesn't say how loud. So once again, let's just crescendo to like mezzo forte, just the speaking voice. We're mostly in piano for this one. It's mostly really quiet. And then we're gonna get up to our speaking voice, and then we'll come right back to piano in measure 20, and then stay in piano all through that fourth line. We have a really quick sudden forte, which we're going to be really loud, like we're trying to project our voice in the forte. And then measure 28, we have a sforzando, which is like a little kick on the top note there, like a zing, like a, oh my gosh, kind of moment. So step on that one there, and then really quickly we go right back to whispering. And at the end of that measure, we've got another crescendo. We're whispering, whispering, then we're going to get a little bit louder to measure 32, maybe a mezzo forte, and then back down to whispering. And then the last two measures, we have a retard, which we won't really hear very much because I'm sure the piano has kind of more moving notes. We're just holding. But we're gonna start to get a little bit slower. And then on beat 3, just like in the second etude, there's a fermata, that little thing here. It's called a fermata, where we're going to just hold the last beat, which is just a rest, but the piano probably has something there. All right, so it's really complicated, this one. It's quite complicated. Since I've been rambling too for about 10 minutes almost, just on the details, let's get our hand patterns, and we're going to jump into this. But there's one last detail, I'm sorry. The tempo at the top, the andante. So andante is kind of like a little walking speed. It's just, you know, it's just happy to be outside and walking. You know, it's just nice and peaceful, maybe. So I like to think of that around 72. Let's see what 72 is. So remember, we're going to count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Dun, 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 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. And this rhythm is really quite tricky. So let's do as Simon says before we jump in. I'm going to put my metronome on. Let's start to feel the beat, right? 1, 2, 3. Now, in order for us to calculate the dotted quarter note, we got to subdivide in eighth notes. So I'm going to count 1 and 2 and 3 and do this with my hand. So this is the eighth note. Can you copy me? So let's try it together. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. So our hand here is keeping the eighth notes. There's going to be three little eighth notes in that first beat. So here's the first measure. Da, 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 da. 1 and 2 and 3 and da, 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 1 and 2 and 3 and. Okay, pause and calculate that with me a few times. I think that we need to get our hand patterns. We're going to jump into this one. All right, so this little etude is on every string. So let's get our hand pattern starting on the C string. We're going to be in the basic hand pattern C, D, E, F, G. So basic. On the G string, we've got G, A. Remember, we got a B flat, so that's going to be right there. Whole step to C, whole step to D, so we have the low 2. On the D string, we have D, E, half step to F, whole step to G, whole step to A, so another low 2. And on the A string, we've got A, half step to B flat, whole step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E. And you notice where my thumb is on this one? It's not all the way back here. I need to move my thumb up. So if you need to do that too, let's try that together. One more time, little review. C string is basic. Middle 2 strings are low 2. The A string is low 1, all whole steps. Okay, and even though the speed is andante, we're gonna sight read this a little bit slower. Maybe at 40. Should we try 40? And it's whispering, so we're gonna use very little bow. And let's maybe start in the upper part of the bow just because that's naturally quieter. So let's start to sway back and forth. Maybe put your bow on the D string. Maybe give yourself a little bit more bow since it's slow, maybe the upper half of the bow. And let's just take a deep breath. Make sure you let your shoulders kind of just drop away. Nice and tall. I'm going to count to 3 and then we'll begin. Okay? 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Crescendo very quickly to forte. Lots of bow. And stay forte. Suddenly piano. Crescendo. Just to speaking. Back to whisper. Crescendo, but just to speaking. Quiet on beat 3, whisper, crescendo very quickly to forte. Sustain. Pop that one out. Quickly to piano. 3, 1, 2, 3. So we got a little retard there at the end. Now you know what, it's odd to end on an up bow, so we're going to add a bowing. Let's go back to that double bar that I mentioned in measure 14, 15, 16, 17. Since that's the beginning of a new section, so measure 17, 14, 15, 16, 17, put a down bow. Let's put a little down bow there, and that way we can actually end on a down bow at the end. Okay, I also have another little tip for you. This is a left hand tip. Let's find measure 28, 29, 30. So the last note of measure 30 is a B flat, and then the next note is an F, and then it goes right back to B flat. So what I'm doing is I'm just leaving my finger here. Let me see if I can play you measure 30. It's on both strings. So what you could do is you could circle those 3 notes there. This is the last note of measure 30, going into the first 2 notes of measure 31. Just circle those 3 notes and just write stay. So you're going to just leave your second finger down on both strings there. And then just a word on whether to use 4th finger or the open string. If your 4th finger can avoid a string crossing for you, right? So for example, let's say you have, you're not sure whether you should play your 4th finger D or you should do open D. Well, if the next note is on the D string, like your 1st finger, then it makes sense, do open D. So for example, let's take a look at measure 28, 29. So in measure 29, should I use 4th finger here for the next measure? Or should I use open D? Well, the next note is still on the G string. So I'm going to stay with 4th finger, that way I can stay on 1 string. But if my next note was actually over here, then I would use my open string. So if your 4th finger can avoid a string crossing, then use your 4th finger. Okay? So I think with that, we're going to give this another try. Let's put the metronome up to andante, which is in my mind 72, the blessed 72. This is going to be a lot faster. So it's definitely going to take some practice, but just so that you can see how fast this might be played, let's give it a try together. So let me pop the metronome on and just kind of feel the beat, walk in place. 1, 2, 3. Da, 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 da. Oh, by the way, music theory nerd moment. Do you think this is on the light side of the spectrum? Is this F major that we're in? Or is this the dark side of the spectrum, D minor? I'll tell you at the end, okay? Please remind me to tell you whether we're in F major or D minor at the end. So use your ears and see if you can tell. So let's go ahead and get ready. Maybe we can be in the upper part of the bow again, starting in the middle. Nice and light. 1, 2, 3. Crescendo. Mezzo forte, back down to whisper, retake for a down bow, crescendo, very little bow on B3, All right, so that is it for Etude 3. Phew. So happy practicing, you guys. Thank you for being with me here today, and I will see you all very soon. Lots of love.